Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cozy Corner. My name is Lee and this is my library. So grab a mug of something yummy and settle in for some talk of books. I am very excited because through what can only be described as a Christmas miracle, I now have over 50 subscribers, which is insane to me. I was sitting comfortably at about 25, 27, somewhere in there for like the whole second half of 2021, which was fine with me. I've never been someone who particularly cared about that too much because this channel was just as a way for me to express and capture my thoughts on reading, and then more people decided they wanted to listen to me. Which, strap in, because sometimes what I say makes no sense. So anyway, welcome to all of you who are new. I'm really glad you're here. You've almost doubled my subscriber count in less than a month, so thanks. I hope you like what happens here, and if not, feel free to leave. There's no pressure to stay. So anyway, welcome. Thank you for subscribing, and let's get into my first official video of 2022. So I don't normally do haul videos because actually I have not, since starting BookTube, gone out for the specific purpose of buying books to read just based on ones that I like, because all of last year I read assigned reading. Or like I only bought books that fulfilled the challenges, and they never really arrived or I never got them at the same time, so I didn't amass enough to do a haul video, which is like half of what BookTube is. And then the year before that I focused only on reading books that I already had, so there really wasn't a way to do a haul video. But, and I don't think this will be a regular thing because I do my best to make sure that I don't buy too much, but Christmas happened, and then the Barnes & Noble sale happened, and then a library rescue sale happened, and then my birthday's happening in a few weeks, and I sort of happened to have enough books together to put a haul together. So we're going to talk about books that I'm hauling for 2022. I was originally going to do an unhaul video with this as well, but I just decided that the books that I'm unhauling are mostly due to taste and not necessarily due to any particular, what's the word I'm looking for, like literary reason as to why I'm not keeping them. So I didn't really think it was beneficial to talk about them. And also sometimes I think unhaul books tend to have a bad vibe, kind of like worst books, which I did do this past year. And I don't really want to give that vibe to those books because I think they're great, but they just are ones that I don't want to keep on my shelves. So if you are interested in seeing what I unhauled from last year, feel free to leave a comment, and I would, if you want to hear about it, that's fine with me. But for me, I was like, we're just going to do the haul because I have too many books to talk about. So let's get into it. The first haul of 2022. Gotta put this down because if you can't tell, I talk with my hands. These are in no order, just whatever's top of the stack. So the first one I have is A Shiver of Snow and Sky by Leuddecke. I got this one from my mom for Christmas, and I love this cover design. Isn't it pretty? I don't know what it is about foil. I think I'm just a sucker for foil. Red, red, the lights glow red, beware the danger up ahead. So I think this book has to do with a plague, but it follows the story of Osa, I think her name is, and where she lives, the sky changes color, and sort of predicts what this, I think the goddess's emotions are. So like green is she's happy, or blue is something, but red is bad. Red means danger. And the last time that the sky glowed red in Osa's town, nearly everyone was killed by a plague. And so now when the sky glows red again, when she's a teenager, she has to try to figure out how to save her village from the onslaught that is about to occur. So I think that's a really interesting synopsis. I also really love that at the end she has a little pronunciation guide for all of her characters, which is nice. I think this is a real like sort of Scandinavian vibe because their island is called Skane, and most of like the symbols and ways names are structured gives me that vibe. So anyway, I think this will be a perfect winter read, and I'm really excited to pick this up eventually. Next, we have a thriller, which is The Perfect Guests by Emma Raus. I picked this one up completely on impulse because I think the concept of this book is fascinating. So it is a dual timeline. The first timeline is in the 80s, and Emma, I think her name, oh no, sorry, that Beth, different character, different book. Beth is taken to stay at Raven Hall with this family, and she makes really close friends with their daughter, and everything is going really well until they ask her to participate in a seemingly harmless game, and something goes wrong and nothing is ever the same. And then cut to 2019, and what's her name? Sadie, a guest at this weekend party. She's kind of struggling, and she's asked to be a fake guest at this party, which turns out to be what is it, like a recreation of it? Oh no, sorry. That the man, like, so all of these guests arriving, and she's getting really weird vibes from the house and from the people, and so I think there's some suspense about whether the house can manipulate people and play games with people. So I love the fact that it's a dual timeline, so we get like the original game that gone wrong in the 80s, which I think has to do with a fire, and then in 2019, whether it's like being haunted, whether the house is the one that's causing all of these creepy things to happen, or whether something even more sinister is afoot. I just think, like, the cover of this book does not say to me weird, creepy thriller, which I think is that kind of red herring stuff that I really, really like. I did not read a lot of thrillers last year, and I think I'm really excited to read more because this is a genre that I know is heated right now, because we had a couple big names in the thriller genre that to many people's eyes tanked, and often books are marketed as thrillers even when they're not. I read a few that were supposedly thrillers last year that were not. So anyway, this book sounds good enough that I was like, I'm gonna pick it up on a cover by, and I love that it's an alternating perspective, like switches between the two girls on chapters, so we get both Beth and Sadie as the story develops. I think this will be really good. Next, I picked up a much beloved series that had its sequel come out last year, and that is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I did watch, what is it, with Cindy on BookTube. She did the Hawthorne Legacy, or did her review of the Hawthorne Legacy, and it was one of the worst books she read last year. So I'm reading the first one and really hoping that it's good enough to make me try the second one. If not, then it is what it is. But this follows the story of Avery, who is sort of the run-of-the-mill teenage girl. She doesn't know how she's going to get a scholarship to go to college and get out of this town that she's living in, and then she discovers that what's his name? Tobias Hawthorne dies and makes her the heir of his estate. And so she has to move to this mansion with all of this man's family and try to solve all of these riddles and clues to discover, or to like win the inheritance. And I've been told that this is more romance than puzzle, Knives Out type book. So maybe now that I know that, going ahead of reading this, I will like it more. I don't know. It's a fascinating concept, so I think it sounds super interesting, and it's I think a really cool concept. So I'm excited to read it and see if it is either worth the hype or not. The next book that I picked up was The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. This was actually on my reading list on my Pinterest page for a long time. It sounds so cool. I love the cover design. I think it is gorgeous. And it was just that kind of fantasy book that really just floats my boat. It is my vibe. But it follows the story of Rysander, I think is her name. But there is a big, massive castle tower thing called Glomengard Castle, and Rysander is a warden of it, and there is a big, dangerous, magical secret that has been locked up there for thousands of years, and as warden, Rysander's job is to make sure that nothing gets into the castle. She is to guard it with their life forever, until she makes one impetuous decision, probably involving a boy, and because that's the trope. And I think she leaves the castle for like one night. And of course, everything goes wrong while she's away. And she's trying to save the world from the darkness that seemingly escapes from the Obsidian Tower. It's so beautiful. And I love that it's a very short synopsis. That's usually, in my mind, an indicator of a fairly decent fantasy book. I see this happen sometimes with, let's just use the Cinderella Disney movie trailer, shall we? Where it just told you the whole story in the trailer. And yes, we know the story, but you would think in your mind, oh, they're telling us the whole story. That must be a red herring. They must do some weird stuff. Nope, it's literally just Cinderella frame for frame. It's why I like brief synopses with a book this thick. That combo in my mind is usually an indicator of a really good book. So we're keeping it simple because there are nearly 500 pages of stuff to fill that simple premise. Something must happen in that book. Not a foolproof theory, but it's usually an indicator for me of something really good is going to happen in here. So sounds interesting, looks stunning, love the concept. I wouldn't be me if I didn't haul at least one classic, because I am trying to amass I'm having a hard time with vocab today. Amass my classics collection, but that is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolfe. I have only ever read A Room of One's Own, and that was way back in college, and I don't remember a whole lot of it, but this book looks so interesting to me. The cover is gorgeous, like hand-painted design. Oh, it's so beautiful. And I think this story premise is really interesting. So it takes place just after World War I and the 1918 flu pandemic. And Clarissa Dalloway, elegant and vivacious, is preparing for a party and remembering those she once loved. In another part of London, Septimus Smith is suffering from shell shock and on the brink of madness. And their lives sort of intertwine, all about regaining life or like normalcy after these awful things happened. And it says, Woolfe achieves an uncanny simulacrum, there's a word I've never seen before, of consciousness, bringing past, present, and future together and recording impression by impression, minute by minute, the feel of life itself. So just sounds like a really interesting slice of life about two people who are unlikely to ever meet. Something happens, their lives are changed. So anyway, I picked this up from my local independent bookstore and it looks really interesting. Yes, this was a cover buy, but also it's a classic and it's Virginia Woolfe. So I have seen many a mixed review on Becky Albertalli. I am subscribed to two people who are on polar opposite sides of liking her material. And I have myself never really had an urge to read anything by her. But I love theater kid TikTok, particularly like, hello JJ Neiman, I watch you so much, but I love theater kid TikTok where they do like caricatures of like toxic theater kids. I don't know what it is about toxic theater kids, like that level of toxicity just hits different. Maybe it's because they know how to be dramatic and how to like carry it off, but I just eat it up. Theater kid TikTok is one of my favorite things. And so when I saw the synopsis of this Becky Albertalli book, I immediately was like, yes, I want to read about theater kids hating each other. Which I don't wish ill any theater kid, but it's just that vibe just. So I picked up Kate in Waiting, and by Becky Albertalli, obviously, and it follows the story of Kate and her friend Anderson, who are like best friends. I don't think they're seniors, but they are in high school, and they are both in theater. They're gonna be in the show, or like planning to audition for the show, until Matt Olson, who is a new kid, shows up at their school, and both of them start crushing on him. And obviously we know that trope in most like sitcoms where two friends crush on someone and it never goes well for the friends, all set in the theater kid background, and then all of a sudden they become enemies and start competing with each other and break a leg, not your heart. I'm really excited to read this. I think it will be really interesting. So anyway, I love it. I think this will be really good and just sort of soothe the savage, gossipy, toxic beast that sometimes emerges when I watch Theater Kid TikTok. Next, I picked up a sort of, I think it's like a combo horror thriller, but this is a hefty book. It looks small, but it's kind of heavy. The House on Vesper Sands by Paraic O'Donnell. This takes place in, I think, the late 1800s. And there is a big house. And this seamstress jumps from a window in the house and is dead. And there is a weird message stitched into her skin, which just is like the most horror vibes. And so the Inspector Cutter is joined by a Cambridge dropout and a female young journalist to inspect her death and investigate why she is potentially connected to a bunch of missing girls, with which his sort of sidekick is in love with one of them. And it just sounds really, really good. The character descriptions in here of Inspector Cutter being a bit Sherlock Holmesy, but also really funny. We get the love-struck Cambridge dropout, like I said, who's in love with one of the missing girls, and the really dedicated, fiercely independent female journalist who is trying to break out of the society columns, all in this sort of late 19th century romp through lower London. And I think this will be a really interesting read. I love that it's eerie, haunting, and fantastically enjoyable. Love eerie. So I also really love Irish authors, so big fan. Anyway, sounds really good. I love the cover design, and like I said, I was on a really big thriller horror kick at the end of last year, so I'm excited to read what this one's about. The next book that I hauled potentially could be the worst / best book haul choice I've ever made. I decided on a huge whim to pick up House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This book it's an encyclopedia. It's so big, but I love alternative formatting in books. I think this concept is incredibly unique. I think it's so fascinating. But basically it follows the story of this family who moves into a small home on Ash Tree Lane who discover there's something terribly wrong. Their house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And I believe there's a whole bunch of writings from all of the characters in the book that sort of try to write down what's happening in this house and keep a log of the strange events. Of course, neither Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Will Davidson nor his companion Karen Green was prepared to face the consequences of that impossibility until the day their two little children wandered off and their voices eerily began to return another story of creature darkness, of an ever-growing abyss behind a closet door, and of that unholy growl which soon enough would tear through their walls and consume all of their dreams. And it's so, like, the pages are all formatted differently. There's different types of writing. There's photos included in here, and I just think this will be a full-on trip to try and interpret. So, I did get the remastered full color edition because go big or go home, you know? So, anyway, I think the concept of this book is fascinating, and I cannot wait to read it, and we will see whether I get any of it at all. Next, I picked up another thriller. I think this is just a thriller. I don't know if it's a horror. But it is Mother May I by Joshilyn Jackson. Again, this one has been circulating for a while, and it sounds really, really good. So it follows the story of Bree, whose mother always told her that the world was a really dark place, and Bree's just sort of chalked it up to her mom being paranoid. And then later, when she was an adult, she sees a witch in her window, and she keeps seeing her until all of a sudden she discovers that her baby has been kidnapped, and she gets a call from this witch and says that Bree can have her baby back for a price. And so of course Bree pays that price because she wants her baby back, and it leads to some devastating consequences. It sounds really creepy and just sort of so not real life and yet real life. So I'm curious to see how this thriller kind of plays out, because it tells you really nothing about what the plot is. It mostly sets up what's supposed to happen, so I'm really excited to see what happens in this story. Rarely in my life have I ever been accused of being a fake fan, with the exception of someone telling me that I only liked Maroon 5 because I thought Adam Levine was attractive, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized they were correct. Anyway, I think I had just and sorry to keep talking about this because I talk about it a lot, but I think I let the awfulness that was the movie adaptation of Artemis Fowl eclipse my real love for Eoin Colfer, who wrote those books. And I discovered at my library, when they did another round of cleaning off shelves, that he wrote 2 adult fiction books that I knew nothing about. And so I picked both of them up for $1. And they are Plugged and Screwed. Plugged is the first, Screwed is the second, or the sequel. And they sound exactly like the beautiful author that is Eoin Colfer. They sound so good. So Plugged follows the story of, what's his name? Where'd he go? Daniel McAvoy, who is an Irish bouncer at a New Jersey club, and he has a problem. Basically, the girl he loves was murdered, and so, of course, then more people start dying, and the mob gets involved, cops, a neighbor who's obsessed with him. He partners up with a volatile detective, a permanently hungover army psychologist, and a mischievous ghost to try to solve who's killing all these people. And that's just sounds like the bizarre world that I would expect nothing less from Eoin Colfer. So it sounds so good. My boss who works at the library was saying that it was weird, and I'm like, that's exactly what I want from Eoin Colfer. The weird and slightly bizarre. And then Screwed is the sequel. I don't really want to read too much about this one because I don't want anything to be spoiled. But basically I think he makes a truce with the Irish mob kingpin, but then an accidental death happens involving all of his friends, and of course puts him at odds with the Irish mob where he lives in New Jersey. And again, more murder mystery solving. So anyway, they sound so good. I love the bizarre world of Eoin Colfer, and I can't wait to read more of his adult fiction. What is that gonna be? It's so different. I've only read middle grade from him, so how does he write for adults? And to end this haul video on a really good note, I got the next 2 books in the Ranger's Apprentice series by John Flanagan. I have read this entire series. I don't own them, so I have been trying, or all of them, so I've been trying to collect them for my own personal collection, because this is one of my all-time favorite series. It has its own place of honor on my favorites shelf. This series is so good. It follows the story of, the series does, of Will, who is an orphan, and on the day that he is supposed to choose an occupation, he discovers that he has been selected to join the mysterious and elusive and dangerous Rangers, group of Rangers, which are the King's private police force, and learns all about who he is and all of these skills, and then of course goes on adventures. So The Sorcerer of the North is book 5, and this is Will's first adventure as a fully fledged ranger. So the books up to this point have been him training and learning, but this is his first time on his own. And he, in the fief where he is in charge of policing, the Lord Sciron, is struck down by a mysterious illness. And so he and his friend Alice decide to go and investigate the circumstances of this illness, and Alice is kidnapped by the villain in this story. And then the 6th book, which is The Siege of Massendaw, which I think is the name of the castle, and where Alice is taken hostage, and the villain of this book joins up with another group of people called the Scotty to invade Luin, which is the kingdom where Will lives. But of course, Will loves Alice, A little bit of spoiler. And so while he wants to protect Heirloom, he also wants to rescue the girl he loves. So this is a really great sort of duology in the middle of a series, and I really, really, really love this particular story, because if you've read to the end of Ranger's Apprentice and started the spin-off The Royal Ranger, you will know why Will and Alice are just icons, and you treasure every moment you have with them. Anyway, I have read these, but they will be very quick rereads because I love this story with all my heart, and it'll just be a great trip down memory lane for me. So there you have it. That is the first haul of 2022. Like I said, I don't know if I'll do another one of these because I'm wanting to whittle down my already massive TBR, but I did want to celebrate ringing in the new year with some new books that I'm looking forward to reading. So if you are planning to read any of these or have read any of these, I would love to know your thoughts, because I love swapping opinions, and whether you liked the books that I picked up or whether you didn't, let me know. I would love to know all of it. So I hope that you are all having a great 2022. It's been a pretty good one for me so far. So if you liked this video, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe, because it really does help me out and let me know what you all want to see. Welcome again to the new people who have joined the Cozy Corner. And as always, a huge thank you to the friends and family who have readily supported me on this journey. It truly means the world to me, and I can't wait to see what's on the next page. Cheers.